All right, everybody. We just got through the longest chapter. Took us like an hour and a half to get through chapter 8, that beautiful chapter where Solomon dedicates the temple to God. And now we're going to start at chapter 9 of 1 Kings, where the Lord appears to Solomon. All right. When Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord in the royal palace and had achieved all he desired to do, the Lord appeared to him a second time, as he had appeared to him at Gibeon. The Lord said to him, I have heard the prayer and the plea you have made before me. I have consecrated this temple which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. As for you, if you walk before me faithfully, with integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and do all I command, and observe my decrees and laws, I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father when I said, you shall never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel. But if you or your descendants turn away from me and do not observe the commands and decrees I have given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them, and will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name. So, it's kind of like it's interesting because there's this promise given in verse 3. I have heard the prayer and plea you have made before me. I've consecrated this temple with the cloud, with all of that stuff, right? And now he's affirming it with his own voice to Solomon. And I don't know if I gotta assume that Solomon's just hearing the audible voice of God here, but I suppose it could just be a very clear impression. But it says the Lord said to him. So there's this clear promise. I've heard the prayer and the plea you have made before me. I have consecrated this temple which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. So there's the promise, but then there's sort of a condition given. He says, as for you, so there's a promise given about the temple, and then he's like, as for you, Solomon. And you think that's just for Solomon, but I'm not sure if it's that clear. Because it says, if you walk before me faithfully with integrity of heart, if you do, right, in uprightness as your father David did, and do all I command and observe in my decrees and laws, I will establish your throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father when I said, you shall never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel. But if you or your descendants turn away from me and do not observe the commands and decrees I have given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them, and I will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name. So you think it's just for Solomon, but it's so funny. Anytime I give anything that resembles a thumbs up, this is what iMovie does. Or even if I do this, it might do it. Come on. All right. So we think that promise or that condition is just for Solomon as a person, but it's clearly for the temple too, because it says, then I will cut off Israel from the land I've given them, and I will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name. So it's for the whole nation, and it's also for the temple. It just shows, I suppose, the connectivity that God sees, the necessary and obvious connectivity God sees between the leadership and the rest of the nation and even the temple, right? Israel will then become a byword and an object of ridicule among all the peoples. This temple will become a heap of rubble. All who pass by will be appalled and will scoff and say, "Why has the Lord done such a thing to this land and to this temple?" People will answer, "Because they have forsaken the Lord their God, who brought their ancestors out of Egypt, and have embraced other gods, worshiping and serving them. That is why the Lord brought all this disaster on them." Solomon's activities. At the end of 20 years, during which Solomon built these two buildings, so it took 20 years to get both the temple and the palace built, King Solomon gave 20 towns in Galilee to Hiram, king of Tyre, because Hiram had supplied him with all the cedar and juniper and gold he wanted. But when Hiram went from Tyre to see the towns that Solomon had given him, he was not pleased with them. "What kind of towns are these that you have given me, my brother?" he asked. And he called them the land of Kabul, a name they have to this day. Now Hiram had sent to the king 120 talents of gold. Here is the account of forced labor King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his own palace, the terracers, the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazar Megiddo. Gezer, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had attacked and captured Gezer. He set it on fire. He killed its Canaanite inhabitants and then gave it as a wedding gift to his daughter, Solomon's wife. And Solomon rebuilt Gezer. He built up Lower Beth Horon, Baalath, and Tadmors in the desert within his land, as well as his store cities and towns for his chariots and for his horses. Whatever he desired to build in Jerusalem and Lebanon and throughout all the territory, he ruled. This is talking about Solomon, right? It's not talking about Hiram. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. There were still people left from the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. These peoples were not Israelites. Solomon conscripted the descendants of all of these peoples remaining in the land, whom the Israelites could not exterminate, to serve as slave labor as it is to this day. But Solomon did not make slaves of any of the Israelites. They were his fighting men. I hope not. His government officials, his officers, his captains, and the commanders of his chariots and charioteers. They were also the chief officials in charge of Solomon's projects, 550 officials supervising those who did the work. After Pharaoh's daughter had come up from the city of David to the palace of Solomon that Solomon had built for her, he constructed the terraces. 3 times a year Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on the altar he had built for the Lord, burning incense before the Lord along with them, and so fulfilled the temple obligations. King Solomon also built ships at Ezion Gibber, which is near Elath in Edom, on the shore of the Red Sea, and Hiram sent his men, sailors, who knew the sea, to serve in the fleet with Solomon's men. They sailed to Ophir and brought back 420 talents of gold, which they delivered to Solomon. Let me just read through that again. King Solomon also built ships at Izion, so now he's got a naval fleet, which is near Elath Edom on the shore of the Red Sea. And Hiram sent him his men, sailors who knew the sea, to serve in the fleet with Solomon's men. So Hiram's really doing, like, that must be a very close alliance. And I don't see, even though Hiram was displeased with those towns, I don't see any clear, like, retaliation that Hiram has. So I wonder if we're going to hear about that more later, or if Hiram sort of just is gracious about that. I'm kind of cheating and looking ahead here. I don't see any clear, like, titles about Hiram getting revenge, or any, like, headlines with Hiram's name. But that doesn't mean it won't eventually come up. So, they sailed to Ophir and brought back 420 talents of gold, which they delivered to King Solomon. So King Solomon just continues to accrue, like, vast wealth and blessing and a lot of glory for Israel at this time. I think I guess it's only 11:50. So let's just do one more chapter here. It's a pretty short chapter. Chapter 10, the Queen of Sheba visits Solomon. When the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon and his relationship to the Lord, she came to test Solomon with hard questions, arriving at Jerusalem with a very great caravan with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold, and precious stones. She came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon in the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he made at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true, but I did not believe these things until I came and saw them with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told to me. In wisdom and wealth you have far exceeded the report I heard. How happy your people must be, how happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel. He has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness." And she gave the king 120 talents of gold. So just more wealth that he's amassing, Solomon's amassing for Israel. And large quantity. She also gave large quantities of spices and precious stones. Never again were so many spices brought in as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Here we go. Hiram's ships brought gold from Ophir, and from there they brought great cargoes of almug wood and precious stones. The king used the almug wood to make supports for the temple of the Lord and for the royal palace, and to make harps and lyres for the musicians. So much almug wood has never been imported or seen since that day. I don't even know what almug wood is. I've never heard of that in my life. I don't know what almug wood is. Let's see if we can get any description of that. We're only going to do one more chapter here, so we got time. Hopefully the memory's not coming to a almug wood. Almug wood refers to a type of wood in the Bible, specifically in relation, we already know that, almug trees. Yields heavy, fine-grained wood that is notably black on the surfaces, yet polishes to a rich ruby or garnet color. Interesting. We got any pictures of it? Yeah, it is kind of blackish. So that's what it looks like. Very beautiful. Yeah, that's another one. And then the black cut can be like that. Wow, so a lot of variation, but very beautiful. Whether it's red or black. Okay. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba all she desired and asked for besides what he had given her out of the royal bounty. Then she left and returned with her retinue to her own country. Solomon's splendor. Where is Sheba? Where is Sheba? So in the Bible, Sheba is associated with the ancient kingdom of Saba, located in the southwestern Arabia. So it would be like modern day Yemen. Interesting. Okay. The weight of the gold that Solomon received yearly was 666 talents, not including the revenues from merchants and traders and from all the Arabian kings and governors of the territory. It's interesting that it's 666. I want to say that one of the precautionary measures God puts on the kings of Israel is not to accrue a lot of wealth. I could be wrong about that, but I believe it's not a lot of wealth, chariots, or women. So I don't know if that's just God being cheeky about the 666 talents, or if that's just a coincidence. But King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 shekels of gold went into each shield. He also made 300 small shields of hammered gold with 3 minas of gold in each shield. The king put them in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. The king made a great throne covered with ivory and overlaid, man, can you imagine that? Covered with ivory and overlaid it with fine gold. And the throne had 6 steps, and its back had a round top. On both sides of the seat were armrests with a lion standing beside each of them. Man, wouldn't it be amazing to see that, what it was really like? Yeah. throne. 6 steps on both sides of the seat were armrests. 12 lions stood on the 6 steps, one on each end of each step. Nothing like it had ever been made in any other kingdom. All King Solomon's goblets were gold, and all the household articles in the palace of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. Nothing was made of silver, because silver was considered of little value in Solomon's day. It's interesting that I think in heaven, aren't the streets supposed to be gold? Is that something that Scripture says? I think Ezekiel might say that, actually. Either that, or if that's just like a spiritual, like a musical lyric that became very well known. But I'm not going to look that one up. So silver was so common, it was considered cheap. The king had a fleet of trading ships at sea, along with the ships of Hiram. Once every 3 years it returned, carrying gold, silver, and ivory, and apes and baboons. So they're carrying exotic animals. King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than any other kings of the earth. The whole world sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom of God that had put in his heart. Year after year, everyone who came brought a gift, articles of silver and gold, robes and weapons and spices and horses and mules. Solomon accumulated chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots. He's collecting them chariots, and that's against God's prescription. 12,000 horses, which he kept in chariot cities and also with him in Jerusalem. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as plentiful as sycamore fig trees in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and from Ku. The royal merchants purchased them from Ku at the current price. They imported a chariot from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver and a horse for 150. They also exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and the Arameans. So that is chapter 9 and 10. We see how wealthy and well-regarded Solomon is becoming, and he's starting to even accrue some things that arguably he shouldn't be accruing. And certainly the next chapter is going to be talking about that with Solomon's wives, but we'll do that next reading. And we're going to start to hear about some adversity. So, all right, see you guys in the next one.